may not recognize it, but this is the all-new 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe XRT. Is this new, ruggedized crossover ready for real adventure? Well, we're going to check out all the features and then put it to the test. Right now on Driving Sports TV. For the past several years, Hyundai has been using dramatic adventure imagery to sell their crossovers. Mountains, trails, rivers, you name it. You've probably seen one of their little crossovers fording, climbing, or scrambling up it. But the hard fact is that here in North America, Hyundai's never really had a true off-road vehicle. Sure, the Palisade, the Tucson, even the Santa Fe was decent on a simple trail or on the beach. I mean, after all, they have a four-wheel drive lock button, right? Right? Hyundai does have their XRT line, but that is more about rugged looks than actual capability. With this new Santa Fe, that all changes. Kind of. This is the 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe XRT. It's a three-row crossover that Hyundai says is a rugged trim with off-road styling additions. Or at least that's what they say on their website. To me, this does have a vague Land Rover-ish feel to it. Price as you see it here is $42,205 US, significantly less than a premium SUV. So does this have the value and the capability that we expect from a off-road focused trim? Let's find out. The scale of this vehicle is a bit deceiving. You will note it is not that tall. It definitely is more of a station wagon than an SUV. Given the Santa Fe's proportions, I can see why even Hyundai compares this versus the two-row Subaru Outback instead of the three-row Ascent. Oh, before I open this, yes, more H's incorporated in the lighting. The new Santa Fe is larger than the outgoing model. It adds a couple of inches in length and 1 to 2 inches in height, depending on the trim. The wheelbase has also been stretched from 108.9 inches all the way to 110.8. The rear gate is huge, which makes loading easy. Of course, you can also sleep in it if you like. Oh yeah, no problem. I got tons of room back here and it is completely flat. Furthermore, it's very solid. Love it. And lots of support. Can I sit here? I can sit here without hitting my head because there's enough of a rake in the back. That's great. Back here we also get storage under the floor. Ooh, there's also an AC power inverter. So I get 115 volts and a max 150 watts. So it's a AC inverter, but it won't power pretty much anything. Happy it's there, better than nothing though. This is now a three-row crossover, but it's still not as large as Hyundai's own Palisade or Honda's Pilot. So this third row is to be used in a pinch. It's tight. Ooh, I get vents and power sockets and my own actual AC control. That's nice. Let me out of here. The second row, however, has plenty of room for adults. Ooh, get a vent over here, that's nice. Down here, waste bin. That opens up for the back too. Huh, lots of interesting ideas here. And then of course we also have the USB-C sockets on the seat backs. Roof rails are standard at this trim level and they will actually take the weight of a rooftop tent. Plus you get this little C-pillar hand grip so you can access all of your gear. It's pretty cool. A tow hitch is not included, but if you do add one, towing is limited to 4,500 pounds. If you are going to be hauling a lot of gear, you're going to need power. Under the hood is a 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes a peak 277 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. It's connected to an 8-speed wet dual-clutch automatic transmission. All XRT trims come standard with all-wheel drive, Continental all-terrain tires wrapped around unique 18-inch alloy wheels, and 8.3 inches of ground clearance, which is a 1.3-inch lift over the standard Santa Fe. You also get an aluminum skid plate in the front. So you're probably thinking, hey, this is an all-new ruggedized, adventure-ready Santa Fe. Clearly, they've added off-road drive modes for the US market, something they've offered internationally for years, but they've never brought here. I mean, Honda has them, Ford has them, Subaru has it with their X-Mode system. It's clearly time for Hyundai to get on board the off-road drive mode train, right? Well, unfortunately, they haven't. They just have Eco, Sport, and Snow as usual. Right, front seat. That's kind of funny. The steering wheel looks like it is right out of a Land Rover. Does somebody know that they're missing a Land Rover steering wheel? Because, yeah, that's what we got here. The gauge cluster is interesting because it looks like it's a full digital display, but in fact, the tack in the Speedo are not digital. They're just cutouts. The actual digital display is this little guy in the middle, just like a traditional Hyundai. And then over on the right here, we do have this kind of blended display to make it look like it's one big one. But what we have over here is its own independent touchscreen, which has all the infotainment stuff. And yeah, here we have home, maps, supports XM satellite radio, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, yada, 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 yada. And this does finally support wireless Apple CarPlay, which is a great addition to see here finally. Traditionally, only the lower end systems on Hyundais had wireless CarPlay. It was kind of this weird omission. The charging pad they include is pretty cool. It actually accounts for the bump on some of these modern phones by letting that hang off. And then the charging element is right in the middle. And then there's a separate pad to the right. Does that one charge? No, we only have one charging terminal here. They just both look the same. But we can run a cable to the other one. Okay. Anyway, overall this interior, it is innovative like a typical Hyundai interior. Don't love all of the materials. Some of the plastics, especially this right here, just kind of look and feel cheap. But the overall aesthetic, I think it's kind of cool. Will it stand up to time? I have absolutely no idea. Time will be the judge of that. Let's go for a drive. Switching into sport mode, the steering rack tightens up a little bit and the transmission will hold gears longer to keep me better in the power curve. But that's about it. There's no adaptive suspension here. Even the all-wheel drive system really isn't modified in any meaningful way. I mean, it drives nice. It just, you don't see much of a difference between the drive modes. In normal mode, the EPA rates economy on this vehicle at 19 miles to the gallon in town and 26 on the highway. There is a snow mode, which will cut throttle in slippery conditions. And then there's also a four-wheel drive lock button. But yeah, not really a four-wheel drive. This vehicle, of course, has all-wheel drive with a multi-plate transfer clutch in the middle to send power from the front to the back. So really what you're doing is telling the computer to keep that engaged at speeds up to 25 miles per hour. However, if it does detect slip, even without engaged, it will switch it on. So it's kind of more of a computer suggestion than doing something like a hard lock you would get with a Torsen center diff or with a proper transfer case. Yeah, so don't let that four-wheel drive lock button fool you into thinking this actually has four-wheel drive. It's not. It's all-wheel drive. Big difference. I mean, driving the Hyundai Santa Fe is a very pleasant experience. This 2.5-liter turbo does produce plenty of power for a vehicle of this size and intent. I even kind of like the gauge clusters, even though they're kind of fakey digital gauges. I mean, they're LCD instead of like a actual, LED panel or OLED or something. The difference being that they look digital, but you can't actually change them. They change only based on color of the drive mode, and that's basically it. Again, it looks good, but it only does one thing. It's a one-trick pony. Of course, this does come with adaptive cruise control, which is a nice feature to have. This system will pace the vehicle in front of me up until the target speed that I've set, and it'll also trace the lanes in the middle very nicely. Now, my hands are off the wheel just to demonstrate. This is obviously a hands-on system. Nothing terribly fancy here, basically the same stuff that you find in, the Hondas and the Subarus of the world. Now we do get paddle shifters here. I find I never really use them in crossovers like this because it's not really a sports car. Now you can downshift using this if you're going down steep hills, especially if you're towing, but there's no tow hitch on this. So again, doesn't really matter. Now, one thing that's really weird about this vehicle is of course the gear shift. You have this little twisty thing, and I think it kind of makes sense. I don't mind it, and it removes the need to have something over here, which I think is good. It frees this up to be a little bit more useful in terms of bins and slots, so that's all good. The seats, however, I don't particularly care for the seats in this vehicle. The headrest, no matter what position I put it in, it pushes my head forward. And though it cradles kind of okay, I just don't find it terribly comfortable. A few days ago, I actually drove this about an hour and a half each direction to go off-roading with some Ford Broncos out in the forest right at the base of Mount Rainier. And that drive to and back, it's not the most comfortable. These seats just don't fit me really well. And that's kind of disappointing. That would actually make this a no-go for me for long distances. However, I understand everybody's body is different. So if you are considering this vehicle, do not take my word of comfort on these as the final word. I think we should try a 0 to 60. Let's do a launch and see what we got. Put it into sport mode for whatever that's worth. Come to a complete stop, and I'm just gonna jam on the throttle. And 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, we got a little, whoa, there's the kick. And 60. This thing is pretty quick, and it has a dual wet clutch transmission. Hopefully we don't have any issues with it today, because historically, the dual clutch transmissions on Hyundais are prone to be a little wonky when you're stressing them off-road, because that is what we are going to do next. We're going to take this to our Peninsula Proving Grounds and see how all these systems work together on a somewhat challenging trail. Now, this isn't a proper four-wheel drive vehicle, so we're not going to try anything crazy, just going to try to replicate what most people might encounter if they're going up to a trailhead here in the Pacific Northwest, in the Northeast, or any place that has anything resembling a mountain. So our first test is one we call the Fun Forest. This is a very simple trail, something you would find going up to a trailhead here in the Pacific Northwest or in many other parts of the country. This would be a road that was built, but over time has kind of sagged in spots. Again, pretty common road that you will find. So a couple notes on Hyundai historically. The twin clutch transmission they include with their turbocharged engines can be problematic in off-road situations. They just don't like all of the slipping that kind of is required for off-roading. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Also, there are drive modes, and I am going to play with the different drive modes because every time I post a Hyundai video, people are like, oh, you use this drive mode? Well, you certainly should have used this other drive mode. Here's the facts on the drive modes. They do not make that much of a difference. They are merely the first line suggestions of how a vehicle should perform. The only significant difference that you'll find in drive modes is, what do they call it? Snow mode, which will start the vehicle with less power. It basically cuts throttle, so you're not spinning your wheels quite so aggressively. But beyond that, it's not a lot of difference. The all-wheel drive system doesn't become magical in one situation versus another in this vehicle. Now, some vehicles, it does. Not Hyundais. Sorry to tell you. And internationally, you can actually get Hyundais that have proper off-road modes, but not here in the United States. For some reason, I think it's probably a licensing or a patent issue or who knows what, they don't offer actual off-road modes here, which is disappointing. This is an XRT trim. I expected to have something along the lines of Subaru's X mode or something like the Honda Trail Sports trail mode, but no. So what I am going to do is I'll go ahead and turn on four-wheel drive lock. What that does is it tells the center clutch to engage initially up to speeds of 25 miles per hour. And then I'm also going to keep it in drive mode normal just for now. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, keep in mind, these type of vehicles, they're constantly reevaluating logic and doing what they think they should do. It is not a, oh yeah, we just have a rear camera on this one, that's right. It's not gonna fix problematic off-road situations, not as much as a lot of people think. So right here, I'm starting to slip and I'm just adding throttle, and you should see some wheel braking kicking in. So we should see the wheels getting grabbed. This is, there we go. Now this is the section of the course where I normally just crawl up like this. This vehicle is obviously having a little bit of a struggle here. Come on, there we go, but it does apply wheel braking and gets us up. Now, on purpose, I'm not just charging up there using momentum to carry me up, because I want to see what this system is capable of. Very often on difficult climbs, you have to stop mid-climb and get going again. That replicates that. So we're going to dip our nose into a hole here on the driver's side. There's been a lot of conversation lately about somebody on Reddit who posted that they got a citation for driving their all-wheel drive Subaru onto a four-wheel drive only trail. Well, whether it's true or not, apparently nobody's actually reached out to the Park Service to find out if it's true or not before flying off the handle. Now everybody's like, oh, you know, this four-wheel drive system is defined as this, and this is defined as that, and this is all-wheel drive, and this is yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. The fact is, these vehicles are not meant for difficult trails. Yes, you can take a Honda Accord onto a complicated trail up until a point. The thought is that up until that point, it'll be fine, until it's not. So that's why you don't really want to like get in over your head. And some of these systems, they do make people think that they're far better than they really are. So you got to look at these things honestly. This is not for complicated trails. This is for getting up to trailheads. It's for staying on roads that, like this, might have seen some wear and tear over the years, but for the most part, they're actual roads still. It's not for bouldering or for going over significant washouts. Also, these type of systems, because they rely on traction, they require that wheel to spin pretty significantly before it catches on. You probably saw that just as we were climbing up the hill there. And that does damage trails. So these type of systems are actually more damaging to trails than a proper locked four-wheel drive system. That's been my experience with my trails. I've also run events where I've run 100 vehicles on one course, and you can see the degradation in the trail from the all-wheel drive vehicles that use brake vectoring as opposed to the vehicles that use hard lockers. So just a couple things to keep in mind there. Anyway, continuing on with the test, I'm going to dip the driver's side wheel down. This is where we're going to see the first taste of any articulation this has. Of course, it's independent suspension front and rear, which means it's going to pick up that rear passenger side wheel. When a wheel is not touching the ground, it can't do anything useful. So that's where brake vectoring will come in. If we were climbing here, actually we're going to climb out a little bit. When climbing, that's where you need that brake vectoring to clamp down on that wheel that's up in the air, so it's not bleeding out all of the torque. Yeah, then we're digging again. Come on, there we go. Spins, oh, and then grabs and pushes us forward. Also, not a big fan of getting shoved forward when it finally does grab that traction. But the systems are working like they're supposed to here, which is a good sign. Continuing on, now I'm not terribly concerned if we rub a little bit here because this does actually have a skid plate on the front, which is a nice addition. So at least they're taking that seriously. Pretty close to the tree back there. Okay, now right here we're going to try to climb out of a situation where we have no traction on either the driver's side front wheel or the passenger side rear. So we have a little bit of roll, but now it's up to the traction systems to get us out of this. And you can see them kind of doing their work. Come on, give us that power. Whoop, there we go. And then a little bit of a surge as it grabs. Don't love that surge. Just gonna watch that tree on the right as we roll out. Now I gotta listen for ground clearance issues here. Any rubbing? Ooh, no rubbing, that's good. Oh, come on. Quit struggling, get us through. So we're gonna go ahead and do the logs here. On this part of the course, I've sunk a number of logs into sand, but it is fairly compact sand. This isn't the loose stuff you would find on the popular spot of the beach or anything. Now I have no cams, so I can't track where my wheels are going exactly. It's going to feel... Oh, let's go ahead and switch this into snow mode, so that'll give me more progressive feel on my throttle. Yes, it'll also cut throttle, so if I have issues, I can always change modes. With logs, you just don't want to hit them too hard because you then create a lot of momentum and you can bottom out when you land. I do have the all-wheel drive lock engaged, so it knows to lock that center clutch, adding throttle. Come on, you're gonna climb? Okay, that's full throttle. We're just gonna dig. So this is where everybody, last video with the Hyundai said, oh, you need to be in like sport mode. So let's go ahead and do sport mode. It's not gonna fix anything. See, same result. There is no magic here. Oh, come on, really? Okay, we're gonna go back to normal before I totally destroy this course. Back a little bit. Okay, now we're gonna have to bump it. I think we have enough ground clearance to bump it. Again, worried about that coming down. Long, come on, you're gonna... Okay, let's take a look outside, see what we got. Dude, it's like a rock and a log. It's not that hard. You just need to climb 3 inches. Come on. That back wheel is completely sunk in the sand too. See, this is where I talk about how much these all-wheel drive systems can chew up a course. Great example. As it's struggling, it's digging deeper and deeper. And it's just not, it's not pushing power around. Well, we're just gonna dig ourselves all the way to the center of the earth here if I keep this up. So I'm gonna go ahead and back out. And that is not a pass. I think really what it shows is that these Hyundais, to really get to the next level, they need to incorporate some proper all-wheel drive off-road logic. They just don't have that right now. And I think that's disappointing because overall, this actually is not a bad vehicle. I kind of like it, actually. I wouldn't buy one personally simply because the seats don't fit me real well, and I don't love the interior for the money. Some people do like this interior. Again, no hate here, but I just wish it would do better at those things, especially when they're moving XRT to become more of a proper off-roader. I mean, you have a skid plate, you have all-terrain tires. I just want a little bit more, but it can't do it. Okay, so let's talk about this test. The difficulty here is, of course, the sand. Now, we do have some boulders planted in here that will help vehicles get through it with minimal damage, basically. But what we encountered here was that the Santa Fe, it just couldn't shift power quick enough. Now, in sand, you need to shift power fast or you're going to dig a hole. And that's exactly what we see here. On the driver's side front, it just digs. On the opposite side, we have no power coming over here. And it's because there's no power over there at all in any of the modes. And it's because of a total lack of power going to that opposite wheel in this condition, why I chose not to proceed forward with this test and why it failed. There was nothing that was putting power over there. Now, with these systems, you can keep the throttle in and eventually power will shift. However, big however, while you're waiting for that power to shift, it's currently digging a hole to the middle of the earth. You're getting yourself in a worse situation with every passing second. That is why systems that are faster and more responsive, like the Honda system and like the Subaru system, excel in these conditions because they can shift that power fast enough before you cause yourself a major issue. So I would say the Santa Fe here, it's a perfectly fine vehicle for the street. If you want to take it on light trails, totally doable, but don't get in over your head. I would keep this off of sand and I would also keep it off of anything where you really need a lot of power transfer. For Driving Sports TV, I'm Ryan Douthit. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share our videos. We make them for you. I hope you enjoy them. I hope you enjoyed this test where we learned about this vehicle, and we'll see you again right here with another vehicle real soon.